Can you relate to this image here? I think we can all relate to this image here. So let's talk about that. Let's focus our conversation around that today. Just like different medications and such, age can actually have side effects. And if we know what those side effects are and we have a natural way to overcome that, then you can get a body that feels much more ageless or feel 10, 20 years younger, depending on where you're at in life now. So let's talk about that. And let's look at how should you really look at your body in terms of getting the best results from it and kind of overcoming some of these side effects. So let me introduce a new idea to you that you probably haven't thought about your body like this before. And that is, your body is really the number one thing that it does is it functions as an energy processing station. Yes, an energy processing station. That's really what your body is. And when we don't treat it like an energy processing station, when we don't put good fuel in it, when we don't make it produce energy for us, then it gets very bad at producing energy. And unfortunately, what happens is as you really beyond the age of 30, especially 40, 50, 60, 70 and beyond, you start to feel that even more, right? But let's get into the nitty gritty today and talk about why does that happen? What really goes on and how can we help benefit ourselves and kind of, have a strategy around that. So first, I think it's important to understand a little bit of the science of how your body works. And one of the big things that happens is if you don't exercise, then what happens, or if you don't exercise enough, then what happens is, and by the way, what is enough? So the American College of Sports Medicine says enough exercise is 150 minutes per week. I actually feel that it's a lot more than that and that those numbers are very underrated. But if you're active 150 minutes per week, you're going to get significant health results. So what happens is our body is constantly under different levels of stress, and our immune system is constantly checking to see, are your cells functioning normally? And you see, you're meant to be functional, meant to be physically active. You're meant to be an energy processing station. And when you don't, then what starts to happen is the immune system can start to attack your own body and you start to get inflammatory responses. When you don't use your body enough, then what happens is your body will start to actually wear out. So one of the things that causes, for example, osteoarthritis, and arthritis isn't just activity or excess movement. It can be activity, it can be excess movement and additional loads and stresses and, high exertion physical activity. But it can also be the opposite. It can be not having enough physical activity, because here's what happens. When you're physically active and you put pressure on your knees and your hips and your back and these things in a healthful way, then what happens is you actually stimulate the cells to secrete, the cartilage cells to secrete a substance that fights against the enzymes that break down your cartilage. So when you do physical activity, you actually secrete substances that make you not break down your cartilage as much. So it greatly deters or slows down and minimizes that destruction process of the cartilage. So our bodies are really intended to be used. Another huge factor, right? One of the biggest things that really drive your health is two things. One is the nucleus of the cell. I apologize for getting a little nerdy here, but I think it's very valuable for you. So we'll see if you agree after I share all. So you have the nucleus of the cell. The nucleus is basically like, if it was a construction site, it'd be that construction office where all the blueprints are had and all the designing is happening to design whatever the construction project is. Okay, that's the nucleus of the cell. It holds all the construction plans and it redesigns and remodels the cell. And I'm going to get to why this is important and how you can use this information. Next, we have the mitochondria. The mitochondria of the cell is simply the powerhouse of the cell that produces energy. And it's every cell. So almost pretty much every pathology that you can think of that's related to age, there's some level of degeneration or poor function in mitochondria and or in the nucleus when your age relating side effects are caused. So in other words, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, Like all these things, they're all of them, loss of brain function and feeling your best, and connection with your body of feeling strong and mobile. All these things come down to look at the nucleus and mitochondria. Because here's one thing that's really interesting. When you start to really study physiology, what it shows is that the same thing you're seeing or experiencing in the external world is being mimicked on the micro world. So if we understand the micro world, where it starts, then we can optimize how we feel in our daily life and our function and our movement and our lack of pain and stiffness and all these things that are related to aging. So how do we do that? How do we get more functional nucleus and more functional mitochondria? And so first, here's the thing that you need to know is that resistance training can help grow. So lifting weights and doing physical activity that puts resistance on you will increase the amount of muscle mass and the nucleus that's producing all these construction plans to both remodel the actual muscle cell. And every time you use your muscle cells in physical activity, they send a message to every other cell in your body to become more functional, including killing cancer in your body. Just because you contracted your muscle, just from muscle contraction causes substances to be released that fight and kill cancer and tell every other cell in your body to become healthier. That's literally how it works. And that's the reason why exercise is so crucially important. And if you want to be a highly functioning human and have a life where you're thriving, not just surviving, that's why exercise is so important. So, but resistance training will do that. It'll help increase the amount of muscle that you have, which will make you stronger and give you more tissues so that you can use that in your exercise activity and have more stimulation going on. So that's important. But what the mitochondria does is actually gives you cellular health and function, and the feeling, literally your feeling of energy has everything to do with the mitochondria. So aerobic exercise, right? And these things that I'm talking about aren't talked about, sure as heck, not by trainers. Like what I'm about to share is very, very deep. This is the pinnacle level of understanding physiology and anti-aging fitness. Is aerobic fitness will do two big things. One of the things it does is it improves your transcription factors. In other words, what the heck is transcription factor? What it does is it helps your body learn how to remodel all your cellular structures, because every year, almost your entire body is regenerating and replacing itself. So every year your body becomes new. And one of the things that's hugely important for that is aerobic fitness, because it's training the cells, the nucleus and the mitochondria to be able to produce more energy, to be able to remodel itself and every other cell more efficiently, more effectively, and more youthfully. It literally does this job. And secondly, aerobic exercise will make you more resistant to stress. It'll make you less susceptible to the negative effects of stress, or more resistant to stress. So in other words, we have oxidation from our environment and stresses and all these things that come into our body and toxins. And by doing aerobic exercise, you actually make your body more resistant to that fatigue. And as you age, when you don't do these things and you don't think about it like this and you don't train your body, then what will happen is your nucleus starts to not function as well, which changes your remodeling of all your cells to become aged and to produce less energy. And then your immune system says, oh, well, that's not right. That's foreign. And then it starts to attack its own cells. And that's where these inflammatory processes come from and all the age-relating diseases come from. So you have to be able to do aerobic exercise to optimize the cellular turnover to be most efficient. And you need to do resistance training to have a significant amount of muscle tissue, or keep your muscle tissue as you age. Because the biggest age-relating side effect is something called sarcopenia. And sarcopenia is the loss of strength and muscle as you age. And oftentimes your body's programmed to age and lose these things. But You can make drastic improvements, regardless of what your age is, by both doing aerobic exercise and resistance exercise to reprogram these functions of the cells. Another thing that's extremely interesting in what they've shown in some very detailed research is that if you think about the nucleus, remember the nucleus is the part of the cell that reprogram and restructures and has all the blueprints and design plans for making all your cellular structures, right? And so if your cells aren't functioning well, you don't function well, and you end up developing diseases. So you need well-functioning cells. So the nucleus is where it's located in the tissue. In other words, like if you have this much space of muscle tissue, having a nucleus that's fairly centered in the tissue creates the ability to send project plans and restructure the tissue around that nucleus. When that nucleus is kind of over in the corner, which happens with poor functioning tissues, then it starts to lose the ability to redesign that tissue. So imagine if you have these structures in your body that are reprogramming all your tissues, and as they start to get spatially disorganized, in other words, placed in the wrong part of the cell, then what will happen is you'll start to feel tissues that are tighter, more dysfunctional, weaker, and you'll begin to go into a degenerative process. And then what happens is your can't do list grows and your can do list decreases. And because you're doing less, because you have these different feelings and ailments and not being as interested in physical activity, then you start to overall downgrade your entire body to not function as well, because remember, the body is an energy processing station. So what do we do about that? How do we get nucleus that are optimally organized in all of our tissues like they were when we were a kid and younger? And
sorry, I need to do an internet check here because I think that he is cutting out. I apologize. Okay.
Is it good?
Yes.
Okay. So, so how do we get the nucleus optimally organized? And I'm giving you guys like the latest and greatest of science. Like this is not, you're not going to find like this conversation on YouTube anywhere. So the way we do that is depending on the way the tissue is stressed and loaded will depend on how well the nucleus is organized, because it generally goes within the muscle cell based on having an even amount of stress in the muscle. Let me explain. So if you start to get very stiff tissues and you don't have full range of motion, then there'll be many tissues that don't start to contract and move the way they're supposed to. And, you know, if you're not doing exercise in a way that's training all of your body tissues and keeping your body aligned, then your nucleus will begin over a sustained period of time, but will begin to disorganize. And then the actual thing that's rebuilding your body will become dysfunctional at rebuilding your body. So how do we do this? And the way that you do that is something that I call biomechanical or body mechanics, the way your mechanics of your body function. You focus on your body alignment to exercise your body in such a way that you keep full mobility in all of your tissues, and you strengthen your tissues very evenly in a way that keeps your body in good posture, good alignment. And by doing so, you have all the tissues functioning properly. And then by doing the exercise activity, you will have greater proper load and stress and function and optimize both that nucleus and the mitochondria. So that is really, you know, that's some deep stuff, but that's really kind of the secret to fitness. You know, it's over 30. I mean, really over 30, over 50 especially, but really over the age of 30. So, you know, that, and so in other words, if you just go and just do fitness and you're just walking and you're just lifting weights and you don't look at like details of your body alignment, well, you will begin to, yes, you'll get great results. The number one thing you need to do for fitness is just be consistent and just do it. Don't do it way too intense and don't do it way too little or too light. Somewhere in the middle, okay? That you could take that information and you don't need to know anymore and you would get pretty good results. But what you're going to run into with age is all this tissue remodeling and age-related effects. Even if you're that fit person that's been working out for years, like some people in our full body fix challenge have shared with me, hey, I've been fit all this time, I've always exercised, but now I need a shoulder replacement, hip replacement, and these issues start to happen. So what happens for that person is their tissues start to change, become more dysfunctional and tighter, and then the whole body remodeling system start to downgrade. So you can't, if you want optimal results, you can't just go and just do it, right? The whole Nike thing is not going to work. You have to focus on your body in such a way that you're focusing on body alignment first, making sure that all of your ranges of motion are symmetrical and even to create body alignment, and then putting the load and stress on your body in a way that's optimal. Now the question becomes, okay, great, Robbie, so how do we do that? And that's the difficult question. And I'm going to give you that answer in the full body fix challenge. I'm going to start going detail by detail and going literally toe to head from the ground floor up. I'm teaching you that, but it is somewhat of a complicated answer. And one of the reasons that makes it complicated is every joint and all the tissues in the body are a little bit different. They all function. What your foot needs in terms of function is not what your hip needs. It's a little different. So, that's what we're going to teach in the full body fix challenge. And, if I gave you some takeaways for how to take this information and actually do something with it, you should do 150 minutes of exercise per week. And you should have 150 minutes at least in aerobic fitness activity, meaning that it's somewhere around at least 40 to 60% effort. So you're doing it, the feeling of effort, like if 100 is like you're pushing yourself as hard as you possibly can, running, for example, or riding a bike. Well, think about what 40 to just 60% feels like. You should do that for 150 minutes a week. Now, if you're not at 150 minutes a week, don't start at 150 minutes a week. If you're like at 20 or 30 and 10, then just go up about 10% per week. And as long as you're not getting any negative effects, you can keep climbing to that 150 number. Once you get to that 150 number per week, right? And it's best to be in like 30-minute bouts 5 times a week to hit your 150-minute number. Because one of the other things that's important to understand about exercise is that bout of exercise and aging specifically is once you're aging in your exercise, you can't try to crush it in one workout and then recover and come back from that, obviously, right? When you're 18 years old, it doesn't work the same. So the secret is to do very consistent bouts of exercise and have smaller, less intense bouts of exercise. And that's how you'll really optimize, because each exercise session or exposure, if you will, each one creates this degenerative or healthy damage result in your body. It creates a breakdown, and then your body comes back to be strong from it. But if you put too much stimulus in one session, then being in the aging process, you will have increased inflammation, and instead of developing healthy tissue, you'll come back to develop fibrotic or scar tissue. So it's very important that you don't overtrain yourself. You do about 30-minute, work up to 30-minute bouts of aerobic exercise 5 times a week. And then you do another at least 15 to 20 minutes of resistance training, also 3 to 4 times a week. So, by doing those things, you'll get amazing results in being that consistent. But when you want to go on to the next level and fix like the issues and the dysfunction and the feeling in your hip, back, hamstring, ankle, shoulder, whatever it might be, then we have to really go deep and look at body alignment.
We have a question in the chat.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Darren is asking if it's possible to reverse this. Can you get rid of scar tissue?
Somewhat, yes, absolutely, yeah. Somewhat. It's not so much about getting rid of the scar tissue. You can help break that down and remodel somewhat. But the biggest thing is try to focus on not creating more scar tissue. So one of the things that happens is, really beyond the age of 50, roughly, you start to produce this a protein from the muscle cells called a P38. And P38 is basically an inflammatory messenger. So the inflammatory messenger will basically say inflame the tissue, and it creates a greater breakdown of the tissue. And so therefore it's too much stress for your body to recover from. So it comes back and produces scar tissue. So yes, through things like massage, going from hot water into cold water and regenerating the tissues, in this type of doing low level light aerobic exercise followed by massage, all of these things can help regenerate the tissue and help definitely break down some of the scar tissue. But one of the biggest things is then you need to have a plan for improving the tissue function in a way that doesn't break it down additionally. And so one of the best ways to do that is really, in simplest terms, is just stay in your comfort level and follow that, get up to where you're doing those 30 minutes of aerobic, 30-minute bouts of aerobic exercise, 40 to 60% effort, 5 times a week. Because what happens is, with the great thing with exercise too, is once you follow the SMART plan, you start making your body more resilient and more resistant to creating scar tissue, to having fatigue, chronic fatigue, and all these things. And, you know, for women that are going through menopause as well, this can a natural, I don't want to say cure, but a natural huge improvement in a lot of the symptoms that you're experiencing as well, because you just make your body more resistant. You know, if you don't add stress to your body in the form of exercise, then your body's going to get more stressed out and more easily. So, yeah. So that's,
Another question.
yeah, awesome. Let's go.
Okay, Noel, which we know already. Hi, Noel. She's asking, what is the cause of joints that begin to audibly poop with age? Ankles when walking, knees when standing, fingers, etc.
Let's see. What is the cause of joints that begin to audibly pop with age?
Oh, pop, not poop. Poop was more entertaining, Noel.
Well, that's good. Patty added some humor. So audibly pop with age, ankles when walking, knees when standing, yeah. So, you know, because the cartilage starts to wear away, because the cartilage starts to wear away, and then the joints start to get closer together because of that wearing down of the cartilage, they can start to have bone to bone friction, and that's one of the reasons for the arthritic pop. You know, and the best, and it's really partly due to misalignments in the joint or in that tissue area. So one of the best things to do is figure out in that specific body area. So for example, let's say walking, right? And your hip pops. So you need to look at, well, what tissue around the hip is restricted. So for example, when you walk, so let's say that I'm going this direction. When you walk and your feet are face this direction. When you walk, your foot should transfer behind your feet about hip, right? This is your hip, should transfer behind your hip about 15 degrees, which is about like that much angle. It's minimal, but it's not here. So for example, many people that walk, they'll stop as soon as their heel gets in line with their hip, not on purpose, involuntarily, and step again. So that means every time you're walking, you're training your body to shorten your hip flexors, because you're not letting your foot transfer. So every time you take a step in life, you have an opportunity to maintain good mobility. But most people don't have their foot transfer all the way behind their hip. So, and then with changes like that, from sitting in a chair, having the hip flexor, driving the car, you know, just aging tissues, it starts to get restricted. You don't realize that these things are going on. And over the years, your patterns begin to change. And if you don't work on them, then the tissues get restricted, which then changes the joint alignment, which then causes things like popping. So, you know, how do you deal with that? Well, first of all, please understand, with this example that I just gave you, I don't want you to start walking. If you're a person who, as soon as your heel gets aligned with your hip, you know, it's like, yeah, that's me. You don't want to try to get to that 15 degrees right away, because the tissue isn't used to that. So you might want to go to about 5 degrees, get a little bit, make sure you don't have any symptoms or side effects from increasing the mobility if you do back off a little bit, and then go kind of half inch by half inch to where you get to where you have about 15 degrees of mobility with that heel, right? So you're walking and you're having that foot transfer behind the hip. Okay. So that's a great example. That's a great area, for example, that gets really tight. Another area that gets really tight is in walking. When you take a step, the steps start to get shorter. In fact, they have a whole body of research on analyzing gait as someone ages, and they're heavily related to your overall health. How big of a step you take, how fast your walking is hugely related to your health, your fatigability, which how easily you get fatigued, and other body mechanics as well. So in terms of stepping, you want to step, I'm trying to see if I have my measurement device in here. So you step about 30 to 40 degrees. You want your leg to go out about 30 to 40 degrees when you take a step. So 15 degrees to transfer behind your hip, and about 30, 40, 35 degrees when you step out. And you should lift your toes when you step out. So just doing something simple like that will reprogram your feet, your ankles, your hip, everything will realign your back, just because of the way that you're functioning and you're walking in improved patterns. Because now every time you're stepping, the tissues are getting longer range of motion. You're stimulating the nucleus that are feeling the stress. You're adding more mitochondrial function because there's more tissues being activated. You see, this all comes down to this. Understand this. Let me ask you this question first. If you do only a partial range of motion, such as in walking, or for example, you're lifting, let's use a simple exercise, and you're doing a 5-pound curl, bicep curl, versus a 30-pound bicep curl. Are you using your whole body in both with limited range? Are you using all the tissues? Are the tissues just not elongating as much? Or are you actually using more tissues when you do more range or when you lift more weight? Hopefully that question made sense. So in other words, are you using the same amount of tissue, but with less effort? Are you literally using less muscle fibers? Are you literally using less of your body? And the answer is, so actually, no, let's have everyone write in the chat. What do you think? Do you think when, for example, when you lift 5 pounds versus 30 pounds, are you using more of your muscle fibers, or are you using the same amount of muscle fiber to a lesser degree? If you would write in the chat, I'm really curious for people's answers here. Thank you.
Okay, so some men like cars, some men like beers. My man likes the gonium.
So let's see what's everyone's answer. Same, less on the heavier weight, less well, tell me, less fibers functioning. So less fibers functioning, or same amount of fibers functioning. More muscles with 30 pounds. Yeah. More fibers. Yeah. Okay. Why do we use? So the answer is, and honestly, most people guess that you're using the same, because if you watch the bicep when you flex, right, it looks like my whole bicep is flexing, right? You see the whole thing ball up. You see the whole thing straighten. You see the whole thing ball up. So how in the world could it be that more fibers are being worked when you see the whole muscle contracting, right? So because of that, most people guess you're actually using the same amount of muscle fibers, but just to a lesser degree with more weight. But the answer is, in fact, that you actually use more of your muscle fibers, because muscle fibers recruit under an all or nothing principle. In other words, you only use the amount of muscle fibers that you need to do the activity that you're doing. But this can, not only is it related to weight and load that you might be lifting, right? But it can also be related to the range of motion, or how much body involvement you're doing, such as in the example of the walking with the heel transferring forward back and then the heel stepping out enough. There's so much more tissue activation. So when you have more tissue activation, then you're getting all the muscle cells to have more stimulus, which is then creating more signaling to all the cells of your body to become healthier, because it's an energy processing station, and also getting your body to train itself to have better tissue remodeling with the whole nucleus spatial organization thing and the mitochondria. Your whole body gets more functional when your body mechanics are more functioning. And it's not just like, oh, you look better with your posture. No, it's way more than that. It's literally complete reprogramming of your entire body. And the way to have an ageless body is to focus on body mechanics and body alignment and doing thorough, healthful stress throughout your whole body. Because when you do that, it stimulates your entire body to be functional. And then you enjoy everything you do more. You have more clear thinking. You have less stress. You have greater strength. Everything you do in life is basically easier. You get fatigued less easier. You sleep better. Why? Because you're having so much more stimulus in your body during the day from having a body that functions like that. The diurnal or daytime physiological patterns is stronger, which then creates the exact opposite at night, as Dr. Bruce talked about in our last session. Then in your sleeping pattern, you go into deeper sleep, more restful sleep. You stay asleep easier because of your diurnal pattern. So I want you to take away from this that biomechanics and body mechanics are the roots to having optimally functioning physiology and optimally functioning body. And that's why. That's why. I hope you're getting some clarity around seeing why it's so important to have optimally functioning tissues, because it signals everything else in your body to be optimally functioning. So this is a measurement device that our clients in our VIP system use to measure all of their body mobility to optimize every joint and every range of motion. So if you want to, and I'll go deeper into this in a second. So if you want to know, like, well, where am I deficient? How in the world am I going to figure out, what is the right range of motion for all of my tissues and body mechanics? Well, in our Fitness Doctor VIP Mastermind, what we do is we actually teach you how to measure all the major ranges of motion in your body, so that you know where you have deficiencies. And then we give you solutions to match your mobility exercises uniquely to where you're deficient, so you can start getting those tissues to function longer and put the joints in the whole body area that you're working on in more alignment. So then when you do other exercise and strength training, then you have the targeted tissues functioning at their optimal ability, which then again signals all the rest of the body, which changes all these things, including your sleep and your function and your energy and your quality of life and all this stuff, right? So that's one thing we do in the Fitness Doctor VIP Mastermind. And so what I want to tell you about this, so pretend this is a person's hip right here. Right here's their hip, okay? So when you walk, your foot should transfer back about that far. That's how far it should look like that your heel transferred back. So if the person's walking this way, your leg should transfer back about that far. Okay, so, but most people get to where their heels are aligned, and then they step forward again with the other foot. And then they get to where they're aligned, and then they step forward again. So that's how far your heel should transfer back. How far you should step out is about like this far when you step out. So if your leg is like this, sorry, the lighting is being affected here. So you should step out fairly significantly, right? Not at 45 degrees, but a significant size step. So if you're taking small, tiny little steps and you're not having your heel transfer back, there's one area that you can get like huge results from and really improve your body just from the steps that you're taking in life.
Look at the chat.
Okay. How do you find out how much inflammation you have in your body? So there's multiple ways to see how the question was, how do you find out how much inflammation you have in your body? One of the best tests for that, and readily available tests that many doctors test for, is CRP, or C-reactive protein. So that's one of the best ways to test to know how much inflammation and systemic inflammation overall that you're having in your body. But you know what the thing is there's some of these things that we talk about that aren't really testable. Like you can't, unless you have unless you have like literally tissue removed from your body, you're not going to know what your a spatial organization of your nucleus and your cells are, for example. That would be like a really extreme thing to test for. No, you're not going to know that. But on the more macro, large scale size, you're going to know how functional your body alignment is. And the way that it works is when you're doing good body alignment and thorough ranges of motion and putting stress and load on all the proper tissues, then you'll get that result on the micro level. It just is just a fact of the way it works. You know, some of the things I'm sharing with you actually can be shown in research, and there's certain things where you'd have to look at like hundreds of different research articles, know what you're reading, to then put it together to then assimilate a plan for you to get that kind of result. And that's what we do. We're going to be going into some of that pretty deep in the full body fix challenge, talking about your body's mechanics. And the reason why we start there, now you know why, because that's the crucial area. Is it everything? No, then there's other things you need to do to improve on, but that's the place that like you're going to build an amazing foundation and get the most results from. Less on a heavier weight, more muscles with, okay, let's see. So is a lighter weight used under more range of motion better than the heavier weight? Is a lighter weight used under more range of motion better than heavier weight, but not using full range of motion? Okay, so here's the thing with weight and range of motion and stuff. Range of motion is the pinnacle. It is the best. You want to do big, large, full ranges of motion with exercise. But the larger range of motion you get into, the more dangerous it is, because the more the joints stretched out. So you better know what you're doing if you're really pushing your body into large ranges of motion, because they're going to risk high strain, higher rates of strain, such as muscle tears and things like this. So because remember, the exercise is a stimulus. We're looking how to maximize the stimulus to get the greatest health result. So the best way to start is to do very thorough mobility and flexibility training, but use range of motion in such a way that it keeps it comfortable for you. Because if you're maxing out your range of motion and it's uncomfortable, and especially if you use too much weight, then it's a really great way to hurt yourself. And then that crushes the whole system. And now we got can't do list growing again and can do list shrinking. And really the goal here is have a big can do list, like when you're 20 years younger, and have a very tiny little can't do list. So long range training is really good. We do teach that in our system. But you need to know like what you're doing to go into big, large ranges of motion.
I think we should open for questions now.
Sure. Yeah. If anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask, I'm here to answer.
And don't be shy. Turn your camera on and speak.
Spotlight. Oh yes, Sophie. Yes. Hi, Sophie. Your microphone is muted. If you'd like to unmute.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay. Okay, I'm French, so sometimes my
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
We've been to France. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Canadian actually. I'm from Quebec.
Oh, awesome.
Montreal. Yeah. Well, to make a story short, I had a big trauma that happened to me, and I got very, very intense and got a lot of stress, and I stopped altogether doing exercise. And now I find myself like 9 months later with osteoarthritis in my hips. And the only thing I can do right now, and I saw a doctor, he told me just not to do any weight or anything, just try to do a better range of what I can do with my hip, but it's very difficult. I mean, it's difficult to even stand up, sometimes, and sometimes it goes away, and it seems to trigger somewhere else on my leg, maybe on my knee, or it's never the same. So, but I was just wondering, is it too late, or is it, I mean, have
I personally believe it's never too late.
oh,
It's never too late. As I say, as long as your heart is beating and blood is running through your veins, you can always improve yourself, because that means that you have cells that are able to regenerate enough to keep you alive. And
yeah,
as long as you can do that, then there's a path for progression, and
okay.
there's a way for you to improve. So I think absolutely. And the best way is you need to have a way to know what is body alignment for you and where do you have restrictions, so that you can start increasing the range of motion in those tissues. And if you don't have any, do you have any cardiovascular issues or conditions,
No,
pathologies,
no,
heart
no,
disease,
I'm
high,
in good health, but except that it's my, well, it started, I think I have one leg longer than the other one. Just like now it's only millimeters, before it started to be 3 centimeters and a half, something like that, big. And
yeah,
now, because I saw a chiropractor, it's coming down to almost 3 millimeters to 0, and then every 2 months, then it
yeah,
goes up to 3 millimeters or something. But it's my hip that's crooked. I can feel that it's not centered,
yeah,
and now it's because, you see, I went. When I started not feeling so good, I went to see a doctor about 2 months ago, or I don't know. And the thing is that I walked to the doctors, and back and forth. And in fact, it happened that I walked 4 hours that day. Now, that's what triggered my osteo,
mm, mhm.
because I had not walked for.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly, yeah, yeah. And exactly, yeah, you need to be careful with exercise, because although, we want to put this healthful stress and load on our body, we have to really be careful, and because we can create a very strong inflammatory response. And especially, again, beyond the age of 30, really, and the older the age, depending on the individual and their genetics, the more we're going to have blowback from that, because our body is designed in such a way that we're going to have a stronger inflammatory response the greater the age is in general. So
I'm 67, so
yeah, and which is not, for me, this is young,
very
for me,
good.
you're like a spring chicken. So
Phew.
yeah, yeah. On our fifth day of the full body fix, you'll meet one of the fittest 80-year-olds in the world. But anyway, so the learning lesson for you and everybody here is don't do more than about 10% of what you're used to. In other words, what is your body adapted to? And so if you're not used to strength training, you're going to start strength training. Think like, what is your body used to? What do I think my body is accustomed to on a moderate level, basically, in very simple terms. Because, one of the big things that happens, that was a good example. You did this on your own. But one big thing I see that happens in fitness, I'll tell you a story here. I was at the gym, this is a few years back, and I see this trainer doing what's called forced negatives. A forced negative is when you lift the weight, for example, when the muscle is elongating, that's the negative. Okay, they call this the negative or eccentric action, the muscle's lengthening. Well, an advanced training strategy is to apply more pressure on the downward phase, because you're able to lift more for that, and it creates more muscular damage. Well, I went over and asked, how long have you been training? And the guy says, I've been training for, this is my first week. So he's using an advanced training strategy for someone that would use like 5-10 years into training, and he's using it in the week 1. So I'm like, yeah, you're going to have trouble straightening your arm tomorrow because of the level of scar tissue and excess inflammation. So it's an interesting story to share. we need to be very cognizant of how much load and stress we're placing on our body with exercise, because if we do it intelligently, then we can keep going. Then we can keep adding to. But if we do it too much too early, we end up with a negative process. So one thing for you to have actual takeaway to help you is I would look at doing what's called blood flow restriction training. Blood flow restriction training, first of all, is not occlusion. Occlusion is you cut off the blood flow completely. So what I'm talking about is blood flow restriction. So blood flow restriction training is, first of all, for someone who does not have cardiovascular conditions, does not have any risks for clotting, okay? So for having blood clots. So as long as you don't have any pathologies or histories of that, it can be good for you. Blood flow restriction is you use a cuff or elastic band with very moderate pressure, either on the upper thigh or upper arm. And what happens is by restricting the blood flow to the area, you begin to decrease both oxygen to the tissue, and you start to make it so that the byproduct or waste product of the metabolism in the muscles is not able to escape as easy, so it builds up more. Long story short, you can use a very light weight and get the effects of heavy strength training without putting heavy mechanical stress on your body, but you still get the physiological benefit of that. So by using a BFR, you get to get a very high stimulus in a very safe way. And the other things that happen is you have two types of muscle, primarily have two types of muscle tissue: slow twitch muscle tissue, which is muscle tissue that uses oxygen, is muscle that can do a long sustained period of time of exercise and doesn't break down. So it's not going to grow very easy. Okay. And then you have fast twitch muscle fiber. Your fast twitch muscle fiber is for higher load. And the benefit of doing things that work your fast twitch muscle fiber is the tissue breaks down easier, which is a good thing, because what happens is it comes back and it increases the muscle size and makes your body stronger. So one way to get to the fast twitch muscle fiber, which typically requires explosive fast motion or heavier load, one way to target those tissues without using high load that will cause excess pain and damage and inflammation, is using blood flow restriction in the form of an elastic band, not an elastic band. They have specific cuffs for this that you can buy online. You use on your upper limb, either on the legs or upper arm. And again, you can get much greater stimulus. So by having unique strategies and approach for moving forward, you're able to have the kind of condition that you have in your hips and still find progress and still have tissue improvement. So I would suggest blood flow restriction, and you can use blood flow restriction in strength training. You can use it in just walking, and you can have increased results. So it's both for fitness improvements and a therapeutic effect as well.
I dropped an Amazon link for blood flow restriction bands, if you would like.
Let me see which one you dropped. I want to make sure that
I dropped the search link, which has several different options.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll drop another link for the you can find on Amazon. There's a whole variation of pricing. And by the way, we're not dropping any links. We do have a Fitness Doctor store, but the links we're dropping in the chat, we don't have a product on Amazon for blood flow restriction. So none of this is a promotion. We're not none of this we're making money on anything that we're sharing in these links here, just so everybody knows.
It's called blood flow restriction band, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then I just dropped a link for the best. Those are the best cuffs. The link I dropped is for those are the best cuffs.
She is in France.
No, she's in Canada. She's from France.
Quebec.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's weird.
Yeah.
Cuff. Okay. rockcuff.com. Okay,
So-
I'll get that.
So Robin, do you teach how
Oh.
to sit and stand with good posture? Darren is asking.
Let me just give one caveat really quick, since I talked about BFR, do my due diligence here. So you should have one great way to do BFR training is you do one set of 30 repetitions and then 3 sets of 15 repetitions with about 20 to 30% of your 1 rep max. What does that mean and how can I make it simpler? You use a very light weight and you do 30 reps for the first set. You rest 30 seconds to 1 minute and you do 3 more sets of 15 reps. And this can be for any exercise. So after you apply the BFR, you would do this. Do not keep the BFR on for like an hour. This is like a 15-minute thing. And do use some caution when you first, like any exercise, please use caution when you start to, things like this that are new, you use as an experiment. You do a minimal amount, a short period of time, and then listen to your body's response. Don't, nothing in the exercise, so you just jump in like you're head first into the deep end of the pool. There's always a slow, methodical process, unless it's a very proven system for therapeutic fitness, like for example, that we teach. And we do teach BFR later in our second phase of our training systems. We will have a BFR phase. So it is a more advanced strategy, but when you have an issue where you're having like you are, Sophie, it is a nice thing to use early on because you can get additional muscle results without putting a lot of stress on your body.
Okay, so you say that one for 30 minutes and then what? I can't remember.
Oh, so you do 4 sets, right? So it's like a set is a continuous amount of lifts, of repetitions. So your first set, you do 30 reps. And then the next 3 sets, you do 15 repetitions each set. And you can do this in squats, in lunges, in a leg extension, leg curl. You can do curls, arm lifts, like, any exercise really. Yeah.
But I can't do squats because I can't. It's difficult for me sometimes just to stand up from sitting to up.
So what you might do is get an elastic band and lay on your back and put your foot on the elastic band and then press with your leg, one leg at a time. Then you're strengthening both your upper body and your leg. So okay. No matter what the issue, there's always some way to regress the exercise, to do the same motion, but in a regress pattern to get results. And then you can start building into the more active result after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So with that, I would like to introduce that we've had a few people ask us about what's next? How do we go deeper? Do you have some type of training system that you can figure all this stuff out for me and teach me on how to move forward and figure out all this body alignment and maximize my nucleus and mitochondrial function and do all these things with me and for me? And we do. And that's called the Fitness Doctor VIP Mastermind, where we treat you like a VIP. We work with you. We combine amazing people with you. We bring in our whole team to help you. We run sessions. You can log on from your home. You don't have to go anywhere. We set you up with the right equipment, which is very minimal. And we provide a very thorough process. If you want to learn more about that, I have some sessions that semi-private sessions. So this is a very small groups of people that I'm offering a very special meeting with me personally, where we can go deeper. And Patricia will go ahead and drop the link in the chat here. And if you'd like to connect with me on that level, the opportunity is right there in the chat. You can schedule and connect with me directly and personally in a smaller, more private session. And Patricia, any other announcements that you'd like to make?
Yes, I would like to say that the link I just put in the chat. And I also would like to say that next week we have Dr. Sachin Patel at same day, same time, Saturday at 11 a.m. PST. And Dr. Sachin is a chiropractor and he is a holistic. Help me out on that,
He's
Robbie.
a holistic naturopathic doctor as well. He's so much more than a chiropractor. He's a brilliant guy with so many things that have to do with health. He's really amazing. He has amazing energy. He's a very loving guy. He's a brilliant, wise doctor. And he's educated in multiple fields of naturopathic medicine. You will not want to miss that session. That'll be the same time next Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific, same place. And Patricia will be sending out those links to you through email, and we'll drop it in the chat here.
Yes, and I will share my screen really quick, just so I have some people that gets confused with the Calendly. So just a second, I will share my screen. Here, okay. So for the link that I just dropped in the chat, we have 3 days currently, and we have the Tuesday the 2nd, Wednesday the 3rd, and Saturday the 6th. So these are the 3 available times that we have, and it's a small group, it's 5 people max. So if you would like to schedule that, you just pick one of these days, then pick the time, click confirm, and then put your name, your phone number, your email, and this little questions here that we have, simple and fast. And that's it. That's my announcement. Robbie replied the last question. If you teach how to sit and stand with good posture.
Absolutely. Yes. That's one very important thing. Absolutely. And we have a whole process for teaching you how to think about your pelvis and your pelvic alignment, your hip alignment, and how that relates to your knee and your foot and your ankle and your spine, and your what's called thoracic alignment between the base of your neck down to your lower back. We break it all down and we teach you that in sessions. Yeah. And some of it's a significant portion of that we will be teaching in the Full Body Fix Challenge. And beyond that, in our Fitness Doctor VIP Mastermind, we go really deep and we go through a multitude of sessions and physical development on all of these things.
And that was the last question for today.
So I hope to see you guys in a private session. If the link is there, you saw that Patricia dropped the link there. The Calendly starts with Calendly at the Fitness Doctor. It's all about you, because it is all about you. That's what we believe in our Fitness Doctor Mastermind, is serving you and creating an awesome fitness experience and taking all this great knowledge that I shared with you today and making it applicable for your body and in your life. So I hope you all make it an amazing weekend, and you have a good Halloween. Halloween's tomorrow, so enjoy.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Barbara.
See you all soon.
And we're of course here to you. I'm sure by now you have my email. You've received many emails, so if you like to get in touch with me personally, you can always do that as well. And much love to each of you, and I'll see you soon.